Business now. Charles Pellegrin's here. He's iconic. Starting with some progress, aren't we, Charles, on the long-delayed trade deal between the EU and US?
You can't say that after Thelma and Louise. But yeah, go back. This is the pact that was announced by US President Donald Trump and EU Commission Chief Ursula von der Leyen in July of last year on Trump's golf course in Scotland in the wake of Washington imposing tariffs on countries all around the world upon Trump's return to the White House. Well, the deal basically capped U.S. tariffs on EU goods at 15%, while the EU committed to reducing or even eliminating duties on U.S. industrial goods. But the deal hasn't been ratified yet. It needs to get the backing of the EU and its member countries first, of the EU Parliament and its member countries first. And that had unnerved Trump to the extent that he threatened to increase tariffs on EU cars to 25% if the pact wasn't implemented by a July 4th deadline.
Yeah, the pressure seems to have yielded results then.
The deal was long delayed by EU lawmakers because of Trump's threats to annex Greenland and because of the U.S. Supreme Court's decision to invalidate a large swath of U.S. tariffs. But the Parliament did end up approving the deal back in March, but with a number of amendments, and including a March 2028 expiration date and a stipulation that the deal wouldn't be implemented unless the U.S. honored its commitments first. And that's what was being discussed in a 5-hour meeting between the Parliament and the EU Council last night in Strasbourg, eventually leading to a provisional agreement.
So what was actually agreed on last night then?
So EU lawmakers and member states basically agreed to the following. They will eliminate customs duties on U.S. industrial goods entering the EU, but with a number of suspension mechanisms, meaning the agreement can be paused if the EU finds that local producers are being negatively impacted by a flood of U.S. imports, if the EU finds the U.S. isn't meeting its commitments, and if the U.S. Keeps applying higher tariffs than 15% on products derivated from steel and aluminium past 2026. The sunset clause for the deal has also been pushed back to late 2029. So the U.S. gets to impose a 15% tariff on EU goods, while the EU lifts tariffs on U.S. industrial goods. But for the presidency of the EU Council, currently held by Cyprus, quote, maintaining a stable, predictable, and balanced transatlantic partnership is in the interests of both sides, adding that the EU is and remains, quote, a trusted and reliable partner in global trade. The deal is now expected to be ratified during a session in Parliament on June 16th, while with EU capitals following suit thereafter.
Next, our daily check on the markets for you.
Well, in Europe, we're seeing trading opening in the red this Wednesday. Investors assessing elevated government bond yields on the back of inflationary pressures caused by the closure of the Hormuz Strait. UK inflation eased to 2.8% in April, but that slowdown appears short-lived. Those concerns over higher treasury yields also bringing stocks down in Asia. The South Korean Kospi lower, with Samsung Electronics dropping 3%. As talks between the company and workers have so far failed to yield results ahead of a scheduled 18-day strike on Thursday.
The talks are resuming again, aren't they, Charles, after breaking down?
That's right. With the AI boom fueling massive demand for microchips, the company's brought in record profits over recent months, and workers are demanding a bigger share. An extended shutdown could threaten a hit both of global chip supplies and South Korea's heavily export-dependent economy. The government now threatening to invoke emergency powers to force a deal. Brian Quinn has the details.
Down to the wire with no deal. Workers at Samsung Electronics are set to walk out Thursday amid a pay dispute. Union leaders expressing regret while blaming management for the breakdown.
Even while we strike, we remain open to dialogue at all times and will continue our efforts to reach a settlement. I want to stress that the union's bargaining delegation accepted the mediation proposal presented by the National Labor Relations Commission.
Negotiations fell apart Wednesday over bonus pay as unions at the South Korean tech giant have been seeking a bigger share of the company's soaring profits. Last quarter saw it set a new record. With more than $88 billion in revenues, it turned nearly $38 billion in profit, far outpacing 2025's full-year profits in just 3 months. Most of that is thanks to Samsung's semiconductor business, as the AI race fuels booming demand for memory chips with global supply unable to keep up. Unions want the company to commit 15% of its yearly profits to employee bonuses and stop capping bonuses at 50% of annual salaries. Management says those demands are excessive, especially when applied to workers at loss-making units. 48,000 workers are now set to strike, dwarfing the company's last walkout in 2024, in which some 6,000 workers downed tools. With potential daily losses of some $670 million and knock-on effects throughout the complex chip supply chain, the government is warning that a strike could ultimately cause up to $66 billion in economic damage, and that it is prepared to force emergency arbitration to prevent such an outcome.
Charles, thanks a lot. Charles Pellegrin with Business. Straight to the press review.